Douluo. The Peerless Tianyan Yuhao Introduction. The Peerless Tang Sect and the same humanities once had a book with a high order of 10,000, the 9 heavenly clouds of dragon song. Rest assured to enter the pit and try it out. At the moment when he opened his eyes, he became the Huo Yuhao who had been manipulated for a lifetime. But this Huo Yuhao is not the other Huo Yuhao, the son of a dignified and righteous aura. He is determined. When the celestial eye cracks, the dazzling light of the sun will spread throughout the world. The divine edict of the gods will resound throughout the continent. The so-called plan of 10,000 years will burn to the ashes under the scorching light. Welcome to Bookmark. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The author is working hard to save the manuscript, and the babies they like will be collected and brought home first. We look forward to the future together. Chapter 1. Huo Yuhao with his third eye. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Beside the dilapidated wooden tombstone, there were several low and small trees. The sky was filled with fine rain, falling leaves and sliding towards the earth. In front of the tombstone, a frail young man stood with a hint of confusion in his eyes. The boy's clothes were adorned with many patches, and he had gone through countless times of sewing and patching. At this point, he had already been soaked in the rain, but he had no reaction. After a long time, the boy's confused eyes gradually woke up and looked at the wooden plaque with the words, "Dead Mother, Huo Yuhao," engraved on it. The young man closed his mouth and shook his head in the end, with an inexplicable sigh in his heart. I don't know if it's my good luck or bad luck. I actually came to Douluo continent and became Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao's gaze fell on the desolate small tomb made of loess and stones. Countless images flashed through his mind, but in the end, the image stopped on the beautiful and gentle woman. On the low room and dilapidated bedboard, there was barely a bed that could be considered a quilt to keep warm. The woman leaned against the cracked wall, her originally clear face devoid of blood, and her body even more emaciated. Her mouth had a smile and a hint of bitterness on it. Finally, after holding the hand of the boy in front of her and saying something, she fell into a heavy rain and loneliness. After the woman was buried, the boy cried here for 3 days before finally fainting, and then he took over everything from the boy. Who? Suddenly, a piercing cold wind blew from the direction of a pile of weeds in the distance, causing Huo Yuhao's already thin and malnourished body to instinctively shrink. He looked up at the drizzling gray sky, unsure if he was speaking to his newly born self or to the woman in the grave. His gentle voice drifted away with the wind, "Leave it to me in the future." Suddenly, a heavy drop of rainwater fell onto Huo Yuhao's head through the bent leaves. The bent leaves swayed up and down, as if answering Huo Yuhao's whispers. The location of the grave is in a small forest of weeds, and due to the season, the leaves are no longer as dark green, appearing slightly withered and yellow. Behind Huo Yuhao, there is a narrow and artificially created path. Due to the rain, this muddy road has become somewhat muddy and sticky, except for areas with stones on the ground that may be even stronger. Huo Yuhao picked up bundles of branches under his feet and placed them on his right shoulder, carefully stepping onto the path and walking towards the outside of this forest. From crossing to the Douluo continent until today, he would come over whenever he had time to talk to the tomb mound. For some reason, the palpitations in his past heart seemed to ease a lot at this moment. The path was long, and due to its difficulty and the weight of carrying branches, it took him a full 20 minutes to walk out. As soon as he stepped out of the dense tree group, a dazzling sunlight shone down from the sky, appearing magnificent everywhere, as if wearing a layer of golden gauze. It turned out that the rain had already stopped. The sunlight fell on Huo Yuhao, and he instinctively reached out his hand to block his eyes. After a while, he calmed down a bit, only to realize that the originally gray sky had cleared up at some point. The world seems to have been washed away, exceptionally clear and transparent. Before encountering the big bug, these days were really tough. Huo Yuhao rubbed his swollen brow with his left hand. I don't know why, starting from the soul piercing through Huo Yuhao's body, his eyebrows would swell slightly whenever the sun appeared, as if something was about to emerge. A few seconds later, the swelling subsided slightly, and Huo Yuhao finally let go and walked forward. Douluo continent is a world dominated by martial souls, without bustling fighting spirit or dazzling magic. The most noble profession in this world is soul master, and there is no one. However, not everyone can become a soul master. When everyone awakens their martial soul, once they lack innate soul power, I'm sorry, you will no longer have any association with the soul master profession. The crop sold by a farmer after a year of hard work may not be as much as the money earned by a low-level soul master in a day. But even if one possesses innate soul power, once the martial soul is an abandoned martial soul, it will be another scene. Huo Yuhao himself is lucky, but he is also very bad. The awakened martial soul is called Lingmo, which is a special martial soul located outside of the beast martial soul and the weapon martial soul, called the ontology martial soul. There is no doubt about the strength of the body's martial soul, but the difference lies in that its innate soul power is only 1 level, while the highest is 10 levels, which is called innate full soul power. Huo Yuhao examined his own body and analyzed the situation that had occurred in the original work. The final conclusion was very simple. He suffered from malnutrition from the mother and fetus, and his martial soul mutated into a spiritual eye. These two factors led to the failure of innate soul power, and even if his body is not lacking, it is not at the level of talent. But from the perspective of someone who has read the original work, Huo Yuhao is aware that innate soul power may not improve, but the speed of later cultivation can be achieved to the same level as those with excellent talents. That is to enhance the resilience and width of meridians. Due to the inability to look inside, Huo Yuhao did not know what his meridians were, but he knew that it was definitely as described in fantasy novels, blocked and difficult to connect. Others can run their soul power within their bodies in a week or even an hour, while they may need at least 10 hours to complete it. If innate soul power creates the difference between genius and mortals, then the situation in the later meridians is the only opportunity for mortals to catch up with genius. In one sentence, it can be described as increasing the strength of meridians, which in turn enhances the strength of innate soul power. There is not much difference between the two. Unfortunately, the medicinal materials needed to expand meridians are too expensive. Huo Yuhao remembers that in the Xianming sect of the Heavenly Soul Empire, there was a medicine called Xianshui Dan inside the sect. With just 1 pill, it could completely increase the strength of his meridians to the speed of cultivation equivalent to that of a person with innate 2nd to 3rd levels. Unfortunately, that pill requires hundreds of thousands of gold soul coins per pill, which is definitely an astronomical number. This kind of dilemma can only gradually change after encountering the heavenly dream ice silkworm, but now, Huo Yuhao is only a little over 10 years old, and there is still a lot of time before he goes to the Star Forest to obtain the first soul ring in the original work. Even because of this, Huo Yuhao is no longer the original Huo Yuhao, and it is difficult to grasp the timing of going to the Star Forest in the future. With his thoughts withdrawn, Huo Yuhao lifted the tree branch on his right shoulder that was about to fall due to its weight. His gaze turned to a small stream in the distance. Due to his weak body and scarce food, Huo Yuhao knew the benefits of eating more meat, so shoo. The sound of breaking through the air suddenly sounded, and a sharp wooden fork with terrifying precision pierced into the water. The sharp part directly penetrated the abdomen of a swimming fish swimming for food, and crimson blood flowed out from the pierced part of the fish, quickly drifting away with the water flow. Huo Yuhao calmly gazed underwater, and he had done such things several times before. Lifting the wooden fork with force, I saw the swimming fish above continuously swaying and splashing with some silver splashes after escaping from the water. Reaching out his hand to take down the swimming fish and throwing it into the grass, Huo Yuhao continued his second stab at the fish. In an instant, he stood still in the water like a stone sculpture, with a wooden fork in his hand raised high, ready for the second stab. His eyes, under the sparkling reflection of the water surface, surprisingly revealed an extremely natural blue glow, containing an incredibly transparent and agile spirit. The water's surface is not stagnant, the water is still flowing, but due to his spiritual eyes and martial soul, Huo Yuhao's perception of things is extremely sensitive, as if all the wind and grass are controlled by him. At this moment underwater, there happened to be a medium-sized swimming fish swimming over. Huo Yuhao clenched his wooden fork, his eyes sharp, and was ready to thrust at any time. When the swimming fish arrived at his attack range, the wooden fork he held tightly thrust out, like a venomous snake spitting out a deadly attack from a snake letter hidden in the dark. However, just as everything was going smoothly, suddenly a sudden sense of confusion came to his mind. The world in front of him seemed to be stirred up, blurred, but he saw endless golden spots. Huo Yuhao lost his accuracy, and the wooden fork in his hand caused the thorn to tilt, piercing into the mud layer in front of the swimming fish. It scared the swimming fish to flee in an instant and quickly disappeared. "What's going on, heatstroke?" Huo Yuhao quickly stabilized his body with the help of a wooden fork, looking at the constantly changing and rotating world in front of him in a daze. He felt his head extremely dizzy, as if once his eyelids were closed, he would completely faint. Huo Yuhao quickly reacted and his face changed dramatically. He quickly suppressed the faint feeling in his mind and calmly rushed back to the grassy shore. If he fainted in the water, he was afraid of drowning alive, which was really embarrassing. Fortunately, it was only 2 meters away from the shore and I quickly walked over. After landing, Huo Yuhao collapsed directly onto the damp grass. He forcefully turned over and lay down, breathing rapidly, his face turning red. His agile eyes met the dazzling sun, and the faint golden light blurred his vision. For some reason, he wanted to remove his head, but it seemed as if he was confined and unable to move. The consequence of staring at the sun for too long is that the retina is damaged. Although many things have changed in Douluo continent, and Newton would shed tears upon seeing it, there is no change in this aspect, consistent with the blue star. In a daze, Huo Yuhao gradually passed out. However, as time passed and the sun had already set, the surroundings began to darken. At the center of his eyebrows, a strange crack appeared, and a golden stream of light faintly revealed, as if he had a third eye. But the crack didn't open for long, and after a few seconds it calmed down as if nothing had happened. Chapter 2. Tianyan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The river water is still flowing, with a clear and gentle murmur. The bright sunlight projects onto the earth, bringing radiance and warmth. On the grassland, more than 10 brown feathered birds are pecking at a long-dead swimming fish, with murky eyes and a hint of unwillingness. Several smaller birds looked at the bipedal creature lying in the distance, swallowed the delicious fish in their mouths, and immediately became curious. After chatting and exchanging ideas, they chose to form a group and cooperate, seemingly wanting to explore. With their wings spread out, they wanted to fly to the bipedal creature's face. Those big birds ignored it and indulged themselves in a feast, tearing pieces of fish meat from the swimming fish and swallowing them into their stomachs. This was much more delicious than those insects, and I don't know if they would have enough to eat and drink before going back and riding a peach garden journey to promote in the bird kingdom. Just as the birds were about to land and stop, a faint golden light burst out from within the apron. A pure and fiery aura swept out from the eyebrows of the bipedal creatures, and in an instant, the bodies of these birds became transparent. It was faintly visible that there was a strange flame burning inside these birds, but the golden light disappeared in an instant and could no longer be seen. The bodies of the birds also returned to normal. The sudden change still frightened them and they dared not continue their exploration. They panicked and began to flee, waving their wings. I don't know how long it has been. The wind grew stronger, and the temperature became colder and colder. The small grass on the grassland seemed to shrink up in fear of the cold. Pain and pain. The cries of pain spread from the slightly noisy stream area, and on the damp grass, Huo Yuhao, who was originally in a coma, suddenly opened his eyes, supported the grass with both hands, and slowly stood up. After sitting for a while to ease the pain, his right hand kept rubbing the center of his eyebrows, because it was as uncomfortable as if the Buddha was about to be roasted there. However, before it could ease for long, when Huo Yuhao saw the dim sky around him, his face quickly changed, his brow furrowed, and he murmured to himself, "What exactly happened? I've been unconscious for so long." Suddenly, he remembered something that had happened before and instinctively placed his hand on his eyes. He was very aware of the consequences of looking at the sun, but after gently stroking it a few times, there was no discomfort, which made Huo Yuhao somewhat puzzled. He endured the hunger in his stomach and came to the river to scoop up a handful of water with both hands, then drank it into his stomach to alleviate his hunger. But just as the cold river water stimulated his consciousness, Huo Yuhao's body, which he had originally intended to move away, froze and he stared at the water in extreme astonishment. Although the sky had darkened, the reflection on the water was still relatively clear. The reason for the solidification was that there was a crack at the center of his eyebrows, where there was a faint glimmer of gold. Huo Yuhao quickly closed his eyes and then opened them again to look, but this time he disappeared from the appearance of the golden light crack, as if everything was just an illusion. But Huo Yuhao didn't think so. He closed his eyes and felt it with his heart. Suddenly, a strange and passionate sensation emanated from his eyes, as if there was some warm current nourishing his eyes, incredibly comfortable. After about 5 seconds, the warm current was gone. When Huo Yuhao opened his eyes again, his originally deep blue eyes had now turned completely golden, with a faint sun shining in them. He turned his head and looked around, only to see a strange flame dancing inside the plants. And around the plant community, there are densely packed flames of different volumes. This strange scene stunned Huo Yuhao. He turned his gaze to one of the big trees to explore. Suddenly, strange runes condensed into his mind. Although he didn't understand the meaning of the runes, Huo Yuhao instinctively recited these series of runes smoothly. When the runes were recited by Huo Yuhao, all the runes dissipated and completely integrated into his soul. At this moment, a gap opened in the center of his eyebrows once again, and at the same time, a huge golden light gushed out from the center of his eyebrows, which looked like a third eye, directly shooting at the 5-meter-tall, bucket-thick tree. The golden light instantly wrapped around the tree, and at a speed visible to the naked eye, the flames jumping inside the tree began to become exceptionally strong, like dry firewood meeting a raging fire, igniting at a touch. However, before Huo Yuhao could observe, as the golden light erupted, his whole body felt as if he had collapsed, covered in sweat, and he collapsed on the grass with a headache. He gasped for breath, as if his strength had also been completely released at this moment. This lasted for half an hour, and there was almost only a faint light in the sky. He finally recovered, and the golden color in his eyes had returned to deep blue. However, Huo Yuhao did not pay attention to these things. He sat on the grass with a strange expression, muttering, "Tianyan." No one answered Huo Yuhao's question, only the howling cold wind hit his thin and weak body, but an indescribable meaning rose on his face. He touched his brow and whispered to himself, "Can this be considered a benefit for the traveler?" Who? The cold wind blew even harder, causing ripples to splash on the river surface. Huo Yuhao, who was already thin, suddenly woke up with a piercing cold wind, and everything returned to reality. After tidying up his thoughts, Huo Yuhao took the initiative to search for the swimming fish. When he picked up the fish, he sighed helplessly. He could clearly see the marks of the fish's belly being pecked, indicating that Lin Miao had eaten it while he was unconscious. But suddenly, Huo Yuhao froze, his vision at this moment. It was already dark, and although it was not as dark as reaching out, it was also very dim. However, when he looked at the swimming fish, the brightness seemed to increase, and he could see very clearly. On the belly of the swimming fish, the white and greasy flesh with a hint of peach red clearly fell into his eyes. You should know that in the past, when releasing soul power to activate martial souls, although vision may also improve slightly, it is definitely not to this extent. Is it difficult because of the heavenly eye? Huo Yuhao suddenly realized that he couldn't think of anything else besides this. Roaming and rumbling. On the sky, there were dense clouds and lightning roaring. Huo Yuhao did not delay any longer and quickly picked up the bound branches on the ground and the missing fish due to the pecking of the forest birds, heading towards the White Tiger Duke's mansion. But what he didn't notice was that the tree, which was hit by the giant golden light, was rapidly expanding in vitality and soon attached an astonishing aura of life. Vaguely, there seemed to be a faint soul power born from this tree. When Huo Yuhao emerged from the dense forest along the stream and returned to the spacious official road, the patter of rain had already fallen, and the ground had become muddy. His clothes were covered in all aspects without blind spots, getting wet. Huo Yuhao gasped for breath and ran back for more than 10 minutes. Finally, a complex of buildings covering an unusually large area appeared before his eyes, probably exceeding 3,000 acres, resembling a palace as a whole. The lights inside were brightly lit, and under the hazy rain and mist, it was as beautiful as ink paintings. Arriving at the north gate of the mansion, Huo Yuhao walked to the small door exclusively for servants to enter and exit, gently opened it, and then walked in. The door wall of the White Tiger Duke's mansion is very high, over 5 meters long, covered in vermilion. Under the bricks and tiles of the wall, there is a sole guiding lamp every 5 meters, and the soft light dispels the darkness, bringing a warm atmosphere. The place where ordinary servants live is located in the architectural complex north of the White Tiger Duke's mansion. Huo Yuhao walked through the corridor, shuttled through several corners, and rushed towards his residence. Due to being suppressed by the Duchess of the White Tiger, the living conditions of Huo Yuner and Huo Yuhao have always been poor. In a mixed room, this mixed room was once used to store old wood, which was already very simple and remote, with no other servants living around. But when Huo Yuhao returned to his residence, his whole face turned ugly. The only quilt left by his mother for him to keep warm was thrown on the ground by someone unknown. The rain had already soaked it, and there were even clear footprints on it. "Oh, I came back quite early." Suddenly, a mischievous and rogue-like voice came from the miscellaneous room, and at the same time, a young man with a youthful appearance poked his head out. Huo Yuhao took a deep breath, his eyes flickering with a look of disgust that instantly appeared on his face. Chapter 3. What is Maternal Love? You are listening at novelfull.audio. He first calmly put down the bundled branches he had collected, and then picked up the bedding on the ground on his own. He reached out and gently brushed the bedding with dirty footprints, quickly staining his hands. Huo Yuner is very foolish. She is not a very wise woman, after all, she has been following Dai Hao's side since childhood, and her world is only Dai Hao. But Huo Yuner can indeed be called a virtuous and gentle mother. She gave all her love to Huo Yuhao until the end of her life. As a person of 2 generations, Huo Yuhao didn't know what maternal love was, but after his soul pierced through the body of Huo Yuhao, the fragments of memories deep in his mind allowed him to experience maternal love for the first time. That was a very warm existence, and this bedding was the last love that Huo Yuner left for Huo Yuhao. But today it got dirty, not only the bedding, but also a mother's concern for her son. The sound of footsteps slowly approached, as if there was no response to his words, making him somewhat anxious. One hand quickly rested on Huo Yuhao's left shoulder, and then a face with impatience approached. "Are you deaf? Is there anything I need?" Huo Yuhao walked lightly to the right, not letting his hand continue to rest on his shoulder. In front of him, a tall and sturdy man with an ordinary face stood there, dressed in the special servant attire of the White Tiger Duke's mansion, without any soul power fluctuations, just an ordinary person. A man does not have his original name, only becomes a servant's nickname after entering the White Tiger Duke's mansion, called Chai San. He is not big, but only in his 20s. He is a member of the firewood room. Chai San was somewhat surprised that Huo Yuhao dared to avoid him, and a hint of anger immediately rose on his face. "Why didn't you do the task of the firewood room today? It caused me to be scolded by the steward." Huo Yuhao turned his head and glanced at him, then casually said, "I see that you have healthy limbs. Normally, you can complete tasks like this on your own. How come it's difficult for you to become a useless person after practicing martial arts recently? After being scolded by Huo Yuhao, Chai-san suddenly widened his eyes. He couldn't believe that this obedient servant girl's son dared to disobey him, and even cursed himself. You son of a cheap servant girl dares to scold me. Chai-san glared angrily, raised his foot and kicked Huo Yuhao. Judging from his skillful movements, it seems that he has already done them many times. Chai-san had a sneer on his face, as if he had already seen the scene of himself kicking the other person to the ground with a heavy kick. When the time came, he would step forward to make up for it and teach someone what it means to be humble. However, unlike in the past when he had to endure adversity, Huo Yuhao's eyes flashed with a faint blue light, and he took a step ahead to fully understand Chai-san's movement trajectory. He cleverly dodged to the side at the moment when Chai-san kicked, which made Chai-san feel lonely. Chai-san kicked the air, perhaps due to a different development from before, he was completely stunned. But even this dodge completely angered Chai-san. Although he is not a soul master, he has at least learned a few moves, which are also a common skill for many non-soul masters in Douluo continent. At the next moment, he turned around, his center of gravity stabilized, and then took a few small steps forward. His fists were like swinging stones, fiercely hitting Huo Yuhao who had just dodged. This punch was powerful enough and came quickly. Chai-san didn't live a life without a meal, he had meat every day. Although Huo Yuhao has the help of his spiritual eyes to capture Chai-san's movement trajectory in relatively dim environments, his weak body cannot become stronger after eating fish for 2 months. His brain can keep up, but his body is not good. After a tiring day, he no longer has much strength. As for the scabbard short blade on his waist, I'm afraid he won't be able to pull it out before he's done. The fist pierced through the rain curtain, and the rain splattered on it. Huo Yuhao's breath tightened, his pupils suddenly dilated, and the fist grew bigger and bigger in his sight. If this punch hits, I'm afraid he'll fall into a baby-like sleep on the spot. But at this most dangerous moment, it seemed that he had sensed the impending danger. Huo Yuhao's deep blue eyes suddenly changed, and a bright sun appeared, causing a gap to crack in his eyebrows once again. Tianyan. As Huo Yuhao's gaze became more focused, a strange situation occurred. Chai-san's body seemed to become transparent, and his speed became incredibly slow. Everything around him seemed to have entered bullet time. Huo Yuhao clearly noticed a faint flame jumping in the opponent's abdominal cavity. In the next moment, Huo Yuhao felt his body temperature instantly rise a lot, and there was a special force guiding him at the center of his eyebrows. Soon, a faint golden light burst out from his heavenly eye, hitting Chai-san's body straight. The golden light instantly covered the flames leaping inside Chai-san's body. Visible to the naked eye, the flames began to shrink and become even dimmer, like a candle in front of the wind, blowing out with one blow. However, Chai-san himself felt like he had been struck by lightning, his eyes wandering a bit. He, who was originally strong in chi and blood, suddenly became lethargic, as if his vitality had been deprived. Bang! In an instant, Chai-san's hand movement stopped, and his fist suddenly fell back about 10 centimeters away from Huo Yuhao. Immediately after, Chai-san lay down on his back. The eerie situation happened again, and strands of invisible energy appeared on Chai-san's body, which then retreated into Huo Yuhao's body. All of this was seen by Huo Yuhao with the help of his heavenly eye. He stood still, the shining sun in his eyes disappearing, and the heavenly eye also dissipated. Cold sweat spread all over his body, mixed with the rain. His chest fluctuated constantly, and he stared intently at Chai-san, who had returned to normal and had fallen to the ground. Swallowing his saliva, Huo Yuhao reached out and touched the center of his eyebrows, but felt an incredibly warm sensation. Is this the function of the heavenly eye? But why didn't I faint after using that golden light this time? And what was the energy that entered my body? Huo Yuhao felt a hint of doubt in his heart. Step by step. Suddenly, Huo Yuhao's expression changed and he looked towards the direction of the courtyard gate, where there were several hurried footsteps running towards him. Huo Yuhao grabbed the short scabbard blade from his waist, looked deeply at Chai-san, but ultimately let it go. He then planned to sneak out of the small door before anyone arrived and escape from the White Tiger Duke's mansion in advance. But as soon as he took a few steps, he stopped, as if he had thought of something. He glanced in the direction west of the Duke's mansion, and then resolutely took action, holding the thin bedding around his waist, and left through the small door on the other side of the house. Yu reading www.yuyukangshu.net. Less than 5 seconds after he left, 6 people rushed in at the gate. Their clothes were no different from those of Chai-san, clearly all servants of the Duke's mansion's firewood room. Little mistress. Just as they entered the courtyard, these 6 people were immediately stunned by everything in front of them. I saw Chai-san lying on the ground like a dead person. If it weren't for his chest and abdomen still undulating, I was afraid he would be mistaken for dead. 6 people rushed forward to inspect Chai-san's body. However, a confused situation occurred, and there was no damage to the surface of Chai-san's body, not a single wound. This. One of the servants looked at his companions in surprise. Everyone looked at each other, unable to understand the situation. But soon, one of the servants noticed the bundles of branches lying on the ground not far away. He suddenly thought of something and walked quickly to the small door on one side of the yard, only to see that it had already been opened, facing a straight corridor. Suddenly, the servant's face showed a hint of disbelief. But soon, this incredulity transformed into an excited expression. He quickly ran back into the yard and shouted excitedly, "It's that little bastard who got hurt." He ran through the back door. Upon hearing this, the other 5 people all raised their heads at the same time. The servant who ran to the small door and glanced excitedly said, "Pick up Chai-san and let's go directly to Manager Wang's place. Don't send Chai-san to the medical room." One of the servants glanced at Chai-san, who was unconscious. "Take him with you to Manager Wang's place, he won't be able to die for a while." Upon hearing this, everyone no longer hesitated and lifted Chai-san up together, then left the dilapidated firewood room. Chapter 4. Dalory's Mother. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the other hand, after leaving the old and dilapidated wooden house, Huo Yuhao did not choose to escape directly from the White Tiger Duke's mansion, but instead chose to find the butler of the White Tiger Duke's mansion. This choice is completely out of necessity. Can he run? Can run. Unfortunately, he cannot escape a distance of 1 kilometer and will definitely be caught. The reason why Chai-san targeted him was because this person, or the entire firewood room, had received instructions from Dai Huabin. It's okay if he doesn't resist, but once he does, he gives this group of people a chance to punish him. It's probably good to lose his skin by then. The Duchess was jealous, so after Dai Hao entered the front line to guard the border, she often arranged for the heavy work of servants to be done by the weak Huo Yuner. After Huo Yuner's death, the Duchess was too lazy to play with Huo Yuhao. After all, he was a first-class waste and not worth mentioning, but his son Dai Huabin took over this job and enjoyed it tirelessly. Dai Huabin, after all, had been exposed to the Duchess of White Tiger since childhood and developed a character of arrogance. He believed that White Tiger's bloodline was extremely noble, while Huo Yuhao, a lowly child born to a close maid, believed that he should die to avoid dirtying his eyes. In these years, Dai Huabin not only kicked Huo Yuner, but also assaulted Huo Yuhao. However, no matter how much Huo Yuhao's identity is, he is also Dai Hao's child. It is impossible to kill him casually like this, and he can only continuously send servants to bully him. Huo Yuhao has injured someone now. Chai-san and other people in the firewood room will definitely go and give a small report to the steward who is the great soul master. Once it reaches Dai Huabin, the other party will definitely be able to use it as a leverage. I'm afraid the person chasing him will not be an ordinary person, but a soul master. How could he possibly escape under such circumstances? So go to the old butler of the White Tiger Duke's mansion in advance to report to Chai-san, and then stabilize the situation while Chai-san and others have not reacted. Don't forget, no matter how Huo Yuhao is, he really has the bloodline of the White Tiger family. According to the rules of the White Tiger Duke's mansion, if a servant commits a crime, he can be executed with a staff. In the past, Huo Yuhao dared not go to find the old butler, but now Huo Yuhao is different. When he chose to fight back against Chai-san, it was destined that he only had to seek help from the old butler. Moreover, with the help of his memory, he also knew that the relationship between the old butler and the Duchess was not good. The servant who cleaned the Luophone courtyard where the old butler lived was executed by the Duchess. The specific reason is unknown, but the servant in his residence was inexplicably ordered to be executed by you. How can the old butler not be angry? However, Huo Yuhao also remembers that it was the old butler who endured it, so there was no follow-up afterwards. Stepping into the rain and mist, splashing water, the light of the sole guiding lamp hanging on the wall appeared somewhat hazy. Huo Yuhao's footsteps were agile and he quickly rushed towards his destination. The White Tiger Duke's mansion has a very large area, with the innermost being the inner mansion, covering an area of 1,000 acres. It is the residence of the owner of the White Tiger Duke's mansion, while the outer mansion is the residence of the legitimate subordinates of the White Tiger Duke's mansion. The outer mansion is home to a large number of experts and soul masters, and the defense is also the strictest, always able to protect the inner mansion from harm. As for ordinary servants, there is no specific title for their place of residence, and it is still outside the outer mansion, which is the courtyard near the outermost wall. The old butler currently lives in a place called Luophone Courtyard on the west side of the Duke's mansion, where the most unique feature is a small area of maple trees. At this time, it is autumn, and the maple trees must have turned into a bright red. The rain grew heavier and heavier, and continuous lines of rainwater slid down from the eaves, merging into the bluestone slabs. The air also became colder, with white mist floating in mid-air. The darkness around seemed to devour the faint light released by the sole guiding lamp. As he walked, Huo Yuhao found himself in a difficult situation and suddenly stopped. He overlooked one of the main issues, which was that ordinary servants were not qualified to enter the outer mansion. Unless approved by the people above, if you step into it and are discovered by the patrolling guards, you will be executed on the spot. Huo Yuhao fell silent, his face changed, as if he was a bit regretful for not thinking clearly about the situation and causing himself to be in crisis. He allowed the rain to wet his body, but at this moment, just as he lowered his head and tried to find a solution as quickly as possible, the corner of his eye glanced at the bedding around his waist. In that moment, his heart suddenly jumped, and his gaze locked on the short blade with a scabbard. The scabbard is approximately 1 foot and 2 inches long, dark green in color, and is made of tough leather. On the leather, there is also a roaring white tiger mark, symbolizing the inheritance of the martial soul of the White Tiger by the White Tiger Duke's mansion. This is exactly the White Tiger dagger that Dai Hao gave to Huo Yuhao. It is said that this was Dai Hao's personal belongings in the past, and among the entire Duke's mansion, only those who dare to use the White Tiger as a seal to stick it on weapons can do so. But it was this simple dagger short blade that gave Huo Yuhao a turning point in entering the outer mansion. This dagger is not a big cabbage on the street. As my mother told me, this dagger is not specifically designed for combat, but rather a symbol of honor. Those who have made outstanding contributions to the White Tiger family will be given a White Tiger dagger. In a sense, with it, you are recognized as a legitimate member of the White Tiger family, that is, your own person. Taking a deep breath, Huo Yuhao quickly headed towards the west side of the outer mansion in the face of heavy rain. Along the way, he also met many servants who were working. However, he was too familiar with the roads that came and went in this building area. He just hid and hid, so these servants couldn't find him. Smooth and unobstructed all the way. And there is no gate blocking the residence of the outer mansion and ordinary servants. The most obvious entrance to the western outer mansion is a few rows of ginkgo trees. That is an arched entrance, with a width of 8 meters and a height of 3 meters. There are 2 white tiger lamp stands on each side, and the light shines out from inside, exceptionally clear. Huo Yuhao was panting heavily, and hot mist spewed out from his mouth. He glanced at the white tiger dagger and resolutely rushed into the entrance of the outer mansion. In an instant, the light became too bright. After entering the outer mansion, the first square building I encountered was called the Spring Breeze Pavilion, which was the place where the White Tiger Duke's mansion used to observe the moon. Compared to the places where ordinary servants live, there is a soul guide lamp every 5 meters, and there is one every 3 meters inside the outer mansion. The quality of the soul guide lamp is much stronger, and injecting soul power at once is enough to use it continuously for 24 hours for 10 days, and the lighting area is further away. What appeared in front of Huo Yuhao were 3 forks leading in 3 directions. Fortunately, he had a good memory. Yu reading www.yuyukeangshu.net knew the way to Luofeng Academy. Immediately, Huo Yuhao endured his hunger and hurried towards his destination. Along the way, perhaps due to the rain or the fact that nothing had happened in the White Tiger Duke's mansion for too long, the patrol team became a bit lazy. Huo Yuhao ran for hundreds of meters without finding any members of the patrol team. In the end, when he ran to the arched bridge of an artificial small river, even in the dark, he still saw the maple trees on the opposite side of the bridge, which were like wisps of flames growing on the branches, as well as a tall building on the side of the maple trees. In the rain and mist, everything appeared somewhat eye-catching. Luofeng Courtyard, here we are. What kind of person? Suddenly, just as Huo Yuhao breathed a sigh of relief, a warning shout came from behind, and his entire spine was cold. He turned around and saw a team of 20 people standing at the exit of a flower-bed corridor, staring at him intently. All of these people are soul masters. With the help of his spiritual eyes, Huo Yuhao could vaguely see the faint fluctuations of soul power on the leader's body. The person had a strong and resolute face, and his eyes were filled with a fierce look. He carried a blade around his waist that was unknown whether it was a soul guide or a regular weapon. His hand was already placed on the handle of the blade, and he could come knocking at him at any time. What happened? Just as Huo Yuhao was about to show his identity with the white tiger dagger, a soft voice rang out, attracting everyone. A gentle-looking beauty walked from a distance with 6 maids holding umbrellas. Seeing the beautiful woman, Huo Yuhao's eyes drooped slightly, but his tense body quietly relaxed. And this beautiful woman is none other than Dai Hao's concubine, who is the biological mother of Huo Yuhao's only younger brother, Daluoli. Chapter 5. 2 Madam's Help, First Encounter with Daluoli. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Second Madam. Upon seeing the beautiful woman, everyone on the patrol immediately showed respect, and the middle-aged man with a resolute face quietly moved his hand away from the handle of the knife. What happened? The beautiful woman walked with a smile on her lips and asked curiously. The captain of the patrol team quickly replied, Madam Hui, an unidentified person has infiltrated the outer mansion. We are about to apprehend him. Upon hearing this, the beautiful woman instinctively turned her head and saw the young man standing on the arched bridge, his body trembling with the cold wind, but his eyes were exceptionally firm. The patched clothes of the young man were already soaked through, and strangely, he was still holding a bed that seemed to be a bedding around his waist. It looked strange at first glance. When she noticed the young man's vivid deep blue eyes, the second lady's eyebrows twitched. The young man's extremely beautiful deep blue eyes seemed to have been seen somewhere before. Madam Heir, please step back a bit. Let's catch this unidentified person first. The captain of the patrol team said respectfully, and then waved his hand. In an instant, the other 19 members of the patrol team dispersed very tacitly, completely sealing off the route that Huo Yuhao could escape. Everyone held on to the handle of the knife at their waist, their eyes sharp, and as soon as the captain spoke, they grabbed the person in front of them. I am not a thief, I have proof that I can freely enter and exit the foreign mansion. Huo Yuhao took a deep breath and spoke loudly. Then, he quickly took out the white tiger dagger from his waist, but this action also made the patrol team members alert and did not listen to him. The captain of the patrol team's eyes turned cold, his muscles tightened, and he ran towards Huo Yuhao like a gust of wind. In a short moment, it rushed out 7 or 8 meters. But at this critical moment, the second lady remembered something and exclaimed in surprise, "Stop it." Upon hearing this, the captain of the patrol team, who had already rushed out for more than 10 meters, suddenly stopped and looked back at the second lady in confusion. The other patrol personnel also looked at the second lady together. In the Duke's mansion, although the second lady is only a concubine, in terms of status, she is only second to the first lady in the 2 legitimate sons and young masters. Moreover, the second lady's father is still the current head of the Imperial Defense Army, with a relatively good status. "Are you Huo Yun'er's son?" The second lady's voice was very gentle, and her beautiful eyes rested on Huo Yuhao. Upon hearing the words Huo Yu'er, the captain of the patrol team's expression slightly changed. He had heard of some things in the Duke's mansion. Yes, Huo Yuhao nodded with a heavy expression. Taking this opportunity, he raised the white tiger dagger in his hand and said to the captain of the patrol team, "This is the white tiger dagger that the Duke of White Tiger personally gave to my mother. As a member of the Duke's palace guard, I believe you should know it." As he spoke, Huo Yuhao showed the side of the scabbard printed with a white tiger to everyone for observation. Seeing the exquisite white tiger pattern, the faces of the patrol team changed slightly. The originally tense mood has indeed eased a bit. In the Star Luo Empire, no one dares to impersonate the exclusive symbol of the white tiger family to deceive people. All these facial changes were captured by Huo Yuhao, who sighed helplessly. To be honest, using the white tiger dagger to indicate his identity was the most extreme means. Once the other party didn't recognize him, he was gone. But there is no other way. Instead of choosing to escape from the Duke's mansion after injuring someone and being caught halfway, tortured, and killed, it is better to take this desperate path with a glimmer of hope. Who made him not choose the path of swallowing his pride like the original work Huo Yuhao? He chose to resist the bullying of these servants, and the development line of history was already stirred at that moment. Huo Yuhao himself doesn't know the outcome. But no matter what, Huo Yuhao was still very grateful to the second lady. If it weren't for the other party calling for a stop, the captain of the patrol team could have caught him in just a few seconds. "I know this person. You go down and don't delay the patrol mission." The second lady's tone became a bit serious. She was actually a soul master, and also a soul sect. When she spoke at this moment, there was also a hint of soul power mixed in her words, which made people dare not underestimate. Upon hearing this, the members of the patrol team collectively turned to their own captain. The captain took a deep look at the white tiger dagger in Huo Yuhao's hand before saying, "All of us have regained our team formation." Quickly, all members of the patrol team gathered together again. Under the gaze of the second lady, all members of the patrol guard quickly left this place and went on patrol to other places. In fact, within the Duke's mansion, there are 18 guards patrolling every night, each with their own area for inspection and not conflicting with each other. This is also why Huo Yuhao did not encounter any other guards along the way. "Thank you." Seeing the guards leave, Huo Yuhao's tense body relaxed. He thanked the second lady with a tired face, and the rain kept washing away his thin and weak body, occasionally trembling with the cold. Seeing Huo Yuhao's appearance, the second wife sighed in her heart. She had seen Huo Yuner's life extremely difficult and had offered to help, but it aroused the disgust of the first wife. She even secretly sent people to deal with her father in the officialdom, but there was no way. Since that time a few years ago, there has been no further help. Unexpectedly, after several years, the woman with agile eyes died, leaving only a child under 11 years old. Thinking about it, the second lady took the initiative to step forward and walk to the small bridge, moving her umbrella slightly and protecting Huo Yuhao under it. Huo Yuhao hesitated for a moment, but then took a few steps back and returned to the rain curtain. Squeak. At this moment, the gate was originally tightly closed and the brightly lit Luofeng courtyard opened. Two people stood in front of the gate, the first one with gray hair and wrinkles on his face. He was dressed in a simple gray robe, estimated to be in his 70s, but despite his age, his eyes were exceptionally clear without any cloudiness. On the side of the old man stood a boy who looked younger than Huo Yuhao, with a stubborn little face, as if he was unhappy about something. Mom! But suddenly, the little boy saw the second lady holding an umbrella, and a stubborn smile appeared on his face. He ran out of the door with enthusiasm, splashing water on the ground and wetting his pants. Before long, the little boy threw himself into the arms of the second lady. The second lady also looked at the little boy with a spoiled expression on her face and pretended to blame him, saying, "You child, you have to run on rainy days. You've wet your pants. This is Daluoli, right?" Huo Yuhao stood in the rain curtain, bowing his head and thinking thoughtfully. But suddenly, he noticed a naked gaze looking at him. He quickly reacted and found where his gaze was. However, he saw an old man in a gray robe standing at the entrance of the Luofeng courtyard, staring at him. This person was the butler who had been following Dai Hao for decades, named Chen Hongsheng, and was commonly referred to as Chen Lao in the mansion. The second lady didn't know what Huo Yuhao was thinking in his heart. She thought it was because Huo Yuhao didn't like someone to get too close to him that she averted her gaze. Now she saw him looking at the location of the Luofeng courtyard and asked, "Are you here to find Mr. Chen?" Huo Yuhao withdrew his gaze and nodded respectfully, "Could you please introduce me?" Although the second lady did not know what was happening to Huo Yuhao, she did not refuse Huo Yuhao's request for help. With some curiosity, she watched Daluoli of Huo Yuhao and walked towards the Luofeng courtyard. Soon, the second lady and Chen Lao seemed to have talked to each other, and Chen Lao also nodded. Later, the second lady led Daluoli back and smiled at Huo Yuhao, saying, "Go ahead." Huo Yuhao took a deep breath and bowed, saying, "Thank you." He didn't say anything about the great kindness that must be repaid in the future, but only remembered this kindness deeply in his heart. After speaking, Huo Yuhao quickly ran towards the position of Luofeng courtyard. "Mother, who is he? Like me, is he also here to learn how to cultivate soul power from Grandpa Chen?" Daluoli looked up and asked her own mother. "Are you hungry?" Madame Eyre did not reveal Huo Yuhao's identity. Upon hearing this, Daluoli forgot what to ask and instead raised her hands excitedly, saying, "I'm already hungry. I feel like I can eat a cow." The second lady doted on the back of Daluoli's head and smiled, saying, "Okay, let's go back and have dinner." In the rain and mist, the second lady led Daluoli, followed by 6 maids behind her, and the group left chatting and laughing until their figures disappeared. Chapter 6. Dignity. How much is it per kilogram? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Come in. Chen Hongsheng didn't even ask Huo Yuhao who asked him for what, but calmly said, then carried it on his hands and turned to walk towards the yard. Upon seeing the situation, Huo Yuhao dared not delay and lightly closed the door of the courtyard, following the old man in front with slow steps. The courtyard is paved with bluestone slabs, with some green grass growing around them, especially emerald green. However, on the ground, there are more than just these. Some maple leaves, which are fiery red, fall on the ground and blend with it. This scene is as brilliant as flames burning on the bluestone slabs. The sky was filled with lightning and thunder, and thick clouds tilted towards the earth, pouring rain. However, Huo Yuhao's gaze changed slightly as he looked at the butler in front of him. Neither of them took an umbrella, and he was soaked through. However, when the rain arrived about a meter beside the old butler's body, it seemed like it was being dispersed by an invisible force, which also kept the old butler's clothes clean. With the powerful observation brought by his spiritual eyes, Huo Yuhao was able to vaguely see a ripple-like atmosphere moving around the old butler, which must be the key to separating rainwater. There are no fixed servants to serve in the entire Luophone courtyard. The old butler spent most of his life in the military camp and probably didn't like these things. In addition, the situation where the servants were executed earlier made the old butler no longer need to fix the servants belonging to the Luophone courtyard. The Luophone courtyard is not particularly large, but the decoration is very elegant. The entire building presents a light yellow color, and some fragrant herbaceous plants are attached to the corridor walls outside the house. Smelling it can make people feel particularly relaxed. Not long after they left, they quickly arrived at a door with a unique pattern. On both sides of the door were embedded soul lights emitting warm-colored lights, and the old butler casually pushed the door open. For a moment, a warm current followed the opening of the door, and a swarm of bees emerged, hitting Huo Yuhao's face, causing his previously stiff little face, which had been constantly impacted by the cold rain, to suddenly relax. The old butler walked in, but Huo Yuhao stopped in front of the door without following up. The old butler took a few steps, paused, and turned around in confusion. His voice, full of anger, rang out, "Why don't you come in?" Huo Yuhao looked at the fiery red plush carpet covered in the floor inside the house, then at his old, muddy cloth shoes. He explained in a low voice, "My shoes are too dirty, they will stain these carpets." The old butler's eyelids lifted, but he didn't say a word. After a while, his tone inexplicably slowed down a bit. "If the carpet gets dirty, someone will take it to clean. Come in, let's talk about something inside." Huo Yuhao didn't hesitate any longer this time. He followed in and stepped on the clean and tidy carpet, then closed the door. However, he only took a step in front of the door and didn't continue to walk forward. He stood there obediently. The old butler slowly walked over to a sofa next to a fireplace and sat down. The hot air continuously overflowed from the fireplace, making the entire hall of the house unusually warm. "What can I do for you?" The old butler casually picked up the ceramic cup on the coffee table, lifted the lid, blew the still steaming tea, and then took a sip. Huo Yuhao's face became solemn as he put down the wet bedding in his hand and knelt directly on the ground. His forehead touched the soft carpet and he said in a deep voice, "Please help me." The old butler's hand holding the teacup paused, his gaze slightly fixed, and he said in a deep voice, "At least your mother Huo Yuner is also someone who has been with Dai Hao for so long. Didn't she teach you that the man has gold under his knees?" "My mother taught me," Huo Yuhao answered truthfully. "Why did you kneel?" The old butler's expression was extremely serious, and a faint wave of soul power spread invisibly from him. The flames in the fireplace were suffocated and stopped beating. Without any hesitation, Huo Yuhao said directly, "It's related to my life. I'm asking for help. The so-called man with gold under his knee is just an empty piece of paper." "Humph." The old butler couldn't help but laugh, and his eyes inexplicably looked at Huo Yuhao, saying something in his words. "You may have sharp teeth and sharp mouth, but kneeling down for help is equivalent to abandoning your dignity, it's not appropriate." Huo Yuhao still calmly looked at the carpet, with a forced smile on his lips and said, "Dignity is something that only works for the strong. Now, I am just a weak person who can be killed at any time. Since I am seeking help from others, I must ask with the most sincere attitude, so please help me." Huo Yuhao's head was lower, and his forehead was completely pressed against the carpet. Upon hearing these words, the old butler's eyebrows relaxed and the hall fell silent. Huo Yuhao did not have any emotional changes in his eyes. As an orphan in his previous life, he was helpless and left school early to work. In the final analysis, he was just the bottom of the society. He was used to seeing it and experienced it personally. For him, his dignity was not even as tight as a piece of mantu he got when he was hungry. Some people value dignity very much because it is a person's last line and must not be trampled upon. But Huo Yuhao is well aware that he has no right to talk about dignity. Either he retains his dignity to win the temporary bottom line and be killed by others, or he gives up his dignity and abandons the temporary dignity to win a powerful opportunity. The flames inside the fireplace began to jump again, and the warm yellow soul-guiding light fell, constantly highlighting its flame shadow on the hot stone wall. Bang! I don't know how long it took before the sound started again. It was the collision between the old butler's cup and the coffee table when he put it down. He looked up at the crystal soul guide light hanging from the ceiling of the hall, with a hint of inexplicable expression on his face. It seemed that Huo Yuhao's words had caused some thoughts. After a long time, the old butler spoke again and asked, "Did you fight back against those who bullied you?" Huo Yuhao's eyes froze as he suddenly lifted his head and looked at the old butler in confusion. The old butler shook his head and smiled, but did not answer Huo Yuhao's doubts. Instead, he asked, "If someone comes to me later to ask for someone, how should you solve it?" Huo Yuhao took a deep breath and a hint of happiness appeared in his eyes. He knew that the old butler was planning to help him. He clenched his fist and the stiffness of his body had eased in the warm room. Yu Shu condensed his voice and said, "According to the 15th rule of the White Tiger Duke's mansion, if a servant commits a crime, he can be executed with a staff." Ha ha ha. The old butler couldn't help but laugh as he pointed at Huo Yuhao. "Yes, that's what you should say, or maybe you should have said it long ago. Don't worry, if they come to your door later, I'll take care of you, old man." Huo Yuhao stood still, looking at the old butler laughing loudly. He inexplicably had a hint of enlightenment in his heart. Why was Huo Yuhao not secretly killed by anyone for a year after his mother's death, and even when he left the White Tiger Duke's mansion, he appeared so relaxed that not even a guard appeared, as if the Duke's mansion was empty? Is there really no one behind this to help? At this moment, Huo Yuhao had an idea in his heart: could the person who secretly helped be this old butler? If the old butler really helped behind the scenes, whether it was big or small, as long as the other party helped, it would be a great kindness. The kindness of a drop of water should be repaid by a gushing spring, which cannot be forgotten. "Come and sit down." A gentle voice sounded, and Huo Yuhao looked up to see the old butler looking at him. Another sentence came from the old butler's mouth: "You just come and sit down. It's difficult for me to help you with this favor." Upon hearing this, Huo Yuhao didn't hesitate at all. Several sprinters sat directly on the sofa opposite the old butler. The old butler shook his head and smiled. Seeing that Huo Yuhao's breath was weak, he turned around and left the hall with a thought. Huo Yuhao just sat silently in that position, and the warm current emanating from the fireplace next to him became even more comfortable. Huo Yuhao simply sat down, but the warm current that dispelled the coldness seemed to also dispel the hunger in his stomach. Everything is so beautiful that he feels a bit unreal inside. Chapter 7. Survival is impossible, death is impossible. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In a well-decorated building located at the north gate of the White Tiger Duke's mansion, warm-colored lights illuminate everything inside. Some moths kept flapping their wings beside the soul-guiding lamp, but they couldn't penetrate the glass cover, could only see forever, but couldn't touch the light. "Steward Wang, that's the way things are." The little bastard didn't know what hurt Chai-san and took the opportunity to escape. A few tables and chairs were placed in the relatively small living room, and Wang Cheng, who was in charge of the firewood room, sat there listening to the news reported by his subordinates. In front of Wang Cheng, there were 6 people standing and 1 lying down. Their clothes were also wet, and the person lying down was extremely strange. Apart from their clothes getting wet, there were no other injuries, but they were unconscious. Wang Cheng suddenly stood up. His small eyes seemed to light up. "Are you 100% sure that little slut really did it?" "I really did it." The 6 servants in the firewood room nodded straight. A hint of joy flashed in Wang Cheng's eyes as he quickly walked towards a room behind a curtain in the living room. Soon, He arrived at a smaller room with few decorations, but a very special object was placed on the table against the wall. This object is not big either. Below is a square metal body, like a metal block, with some peculiar light patterns carved on the surface, and there is a faint flicker inside. On the left side of this metal body, there is a special line connected, which extends upwards and connects to the top shelf of the metal body. On the shelf, there is an extremely small rectangular box the size of a palm. After entering the room, Wang Qing quickly pressed the red button on one side of the metal body. Suddenly, a faint wave of soul power rippled through the interior of this special object, like an electric wave spreading invisibly towards the outside world. Then Wang Qing respectfully picked up the box on the shelf and stuck it to his ear. Time slowly passed, and Wang Qing was like a sculpture, still standing in place, even though the box remained unchanged. But half a minute later, a crisp, drip sound sounded, and Wang Qing's eyes lit up instantly. And the ordinary-looking box suddenly showed a dark blue luster on its surface, followed closely by a low and impatient voice, "What's going on?" Wang Jianli respectfully said, without any delay, "Second young master, that little bastard just started hitting someone, and even ran away after hitting someone." In an instant, Wang Qing seemed to feel like he heard some heavy inhalation sound from the other side of the box. "I understand. You're very good," the deep voice said slightly higher. "Thank you very much for your praise, second young master. This is what I should do," Wang Qing said with a flattering expression on his face. At this moment, the dark blue luster on top of the box disappeared, and Wang Qing obediently put it back. With a crisp click, the box was fixed on the wooden frame, and energy seemed to be injected into it from below. "Good kid, it's really a move. It's up to you for us to get rich." Wang Qing rubbed his hands excitedly, then his smile narrowed and he regained his dignity when facing his servants. He walked out of the room and returned to the living room. "Wang steward, have the second young master replied yet?" Several servants hurriedly asked when Wang Qing returned. Wang Qing's expression remained calm as he picked up a teacup with one hand and calmly took a sip of tea. "Don't worry, following this steward will bring you many benefits," he said. Upon hearing this, the 6 servants all smiled and complimented, "That's right. The steward is good, and we all know it." Wang Qing glanced at a few people and then looked at Chai San lying on the ground. His eyebrows furrowed, but he quickly relaxed and even showed a caring expression. "Take Chai San for treatment quickly, and the deducted treatment fee will be counted on me," he said. "Thank you, Prince Guan. I will take Chai San to treat my injury immediately." After hearing Wang Qing's words, several servants quickly thanked him, and their already excited emotions became even more intense. They were arranged by the steward to bully Huo Yuhao, but now that they were injured, the adults did not blame them. Instead, they spent money to treat their injuries. With such a boss following, Qian too would feel comfortable. Go ahead, so it won't be too late. The treatment room will close." Wang Qingpi smiled and waved his hand without a smile. "All right. Sir, please rest and we won't disturb you." Several servants quickly helped Chai San, who was still unconscious, leave. After they left, Wang Qing's smile instantly narrowed and he shook his sleeve and robe before leaving the reception hall. The White Tiger Duke's mansion is very large, and although the inner mansion is only 1/3 the size, it houses all members of the White Tiger family. Currently, the entire White Tiger family has a population of about 43 people, but they all live on the outskirts of the inner mansion. The most luxurious building in the central area can only be inhabited by the Duke's own family. In one of the magnificent palaces, a golden-haired boy wearing a fiery fox-skin nightgown sneered as he put down his communication soul guide. He murmured to himself, "I thought you were a shrunken turtle, so tolerant, but I didn't expect you to resist. This time, Ben Shao mainly asked you not to survive, not to die." That old man Chen Hongxing couldn't stop him. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net. As he spoke, the young man calmly snapped his fingers. Before long, a gray cyclone slowly condensed and then transformed into a figure kneeling on one knee in front of the young man. This was a person whose face was covered by a gray robe and belonged to the secret guards of the Duke's mansion. A hoarse voice sounded, "Second young master. Go, bring a few people to catch that bastard back. He must have run out of the Duke's mansion. With his soul master's cultivation, he won't be able to run far." The young man instructed indifferently. "I obey your orders." The man in the gray robe lowered his head and replied, then turned into a gray airflow and quietly left the palace. The young man stood up and walked barefoot to a fluorescent crystal table, stepping on the hot plush carpet on the ground. He looked down and picked up the only item on it, which was a special soul guide envelope that could only be opened by special means. Once forcibly opened, the letters inside would be burned directly. In the deep blue eyes of the young man, there were actually double pupils. These evil eyes were fixed on the envelope, and with a movement of his fingertips, a white soul power injected into the envelope. With a simple white light flashing, the young man calmly opened the outer shell of the soul guide envelope and took out the letter inside. But as he finished reading the contents of the letter, his eyes suddenly became eager. "Big brother has made rapid progress and is a few years older than me. If this continues, the future Duke's position will definitely belong to him. I won't have any chance. It seems like I should tell my mother that I should also go to Shrek College to report as soon as possible." As he spoke, the young man grabbed the letter and came to the fireplace. His pupils were filled with jumping flames, and with a flick of his finger, the letter fell into the blazing flames, quickly being burned out. And his figure left this palace. Chapter 8. Conditional reflection belongs to yes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As his body completely warmed up, Huo Yuhao finally realized that the old butler had been away for about 10 minutes, and he didn't know where he had gone. He looked up and looked around, but it appeared quiet, only the crackling sound produced by the wood burning in the fireplace. Goo! Suddenly, a clear sound came from Huo Yuhao's abdomen. His face stiffened, he unconsciously touched his stomach, and murmured. "Brother stomach, wait a little longer. When this matter is solved, I will eat all the mantu I put away, and absolutely fill you up." Goo! My stomach is screaming again. Huo Yuhao. Then add another fish. Stomach brother seemed satisfied and did not continue to chant hunger. Huo Yuhao shook his head helplessly. Fortunately, he had become accustomed to the life of starving over the years, otherwise he wouldn't have adapted. "Are you hungry?" Just as Huo Yuhao lowered his head to communicate with stomach brother, a wisp of fragrance drifted in from somewhere, and at the same time, a gentle voice sounded. Huo Yuhao quickly lifted his head. Chen Lao didn't know when he had returned. He carried a large ceramic bowl and walked to the sofa, gently placing it on the coffee table. Chen chuckled and said, "Let's eat. It's the age of growing up, so we need to eat more." Huo Yuhao was stunned for a moment, and looked at it subconsciously, only to see that the bowl was filled with bright yellow noodles, and 3 square pieces of meat were randomly placed, each of which was 2 centimeters thick. The yellowish-brown soup was slightly oily, and there were several meatballs and vegetables. Oh, by the way, on the fragrant noodle soup, there are also some green onions floating as the final decoration. Goo! Perhaps smelling the aroma, Huo Yuhao's stomach screamed uncontrollably again. He didn't just pick up the bowl and start drying, but instead looked at the ceramic bowl and remained silent for a few seconds. Finally, he took a deep breath as if he wanted to confirm again, saying, "Give it to me. Here you are." Chen Lao picked up his teacup and said, "Let's eat it. If the noodles are lumped, they won't taste good." Huo Yuhao's lips moved, but he didn't say anything. He silently lowered his head and picked up the chopsticks placed on the bowl, then picked up the noodles inside and started eating. He didn't say anything polite, and the sound of chattering noodles began to spread. Noodles, with a hint of wheat fragrance, should be hand-rolled noodles. Not to mention, that piece of meat may seem quite thick and a bit clumsy, but in reality, the meat is juicy and melts right into the mouth. The meatball is very elastic, and it should be able to be used as a table tennis ball. As for vegetables, the roots are as flawless as white jade, and the variety at first glance is not a normal ordinary vegetable. When a mouthful of hot soup is consumed, all four limbs come to life completely. Old Chen didn't make noodles in soup taste very strong. The taste is just so light that people will not feel the taste, nor will they be full of spices in one mouthful. Chen Laopin sipped tea and watched Huo Yuhao ferociously devour noodles in soup. He couldn't help laughing. Snoring. When the last sip of soup was swallowed, Huo Yuhao was sweating all over. He wiped the sweat off his forehead with his arm, took a few deep breaths, and sighed, "This is the first time I've eaten such delicious noodles. It's not that I made it delicious, it's that you're hungry." Chen Laogang was about to continue pouring some tea in the teapot when he suddenly noticed that the kettle was bottoming out. He stood up immediately, holding a ceramic bowl in one hand and a teapot in the other. "You can rest for a while, probably those lackeys are still looking for you outside the mansion." Speaking, old Chen left once again. Hiccup. Huo Yuhao couldn't help but hiccup. He took out a swimming fish with a damaged belly from his wide and deep pants pocket and silently watched, sighing inexplicably. "Yes, I'm hungry. If Chai-san hadn't come to cause trouble, he should have grilled fish now." Since his soul pierced through Huo Yuhao, for some reason, he couldn't help but want to roast the fish, as if it were engraved in his memory. Suddenly, Huo Yuhao's expression began to move slightly. He felt a warm current spreading from his abdomen to his whole body, circulating back and forth along the blocked meridians. It was an inexplicable soul power. The changes in his body instantly caught Huo Yuhao's attention. He quickly closed his eyes and carefully guided the inexplicable soul power that appeared in his body. The speed at which he improved his cultivation was too slow, and he was eager for any soul power, never wasting a trace. Soon, a faint wave of soul power permeated around Huo Yuhao, not strong but warm, like the faint light of the early sun. On the other hand, Chen Lao, who was washing dishes, smiled calmly and said, "The meat of a 1,000-year-old soul beast is enough for you to enjoy. Mom, I plan to go to Shrek College to report in advance." Dai Huabin sat on a soft sofa, looking respectfully at a beautiful woman in the main seat. This beautiful woman is different from Huo Yun'er's pure and charming beauty. Her appearance appears to have a bit of mature charm, with a hint of majesty mixed in with her beauty. Her soft black long hair drapes down, but the loose and luxurious robe covers her body, making it difficult to see whether her figure is good or bad. The beautiful woman held a wine glass in her hand and gently shook it, stirring the ruby-like liquid inside. Under the illumination of the soul-guiding lamp, it appeared somewhat magnificent. Listening to Dai Huabin's request, the beautiful woman stopped shaking her glass and said calmly, "What news did the dark guards who stayed in Shrek City bring you back? Hurrying to Shrek City like this?" Upon hearing the words "dark guard," Dai Huabin's pupils suddenly shrank. Although the room was warm, he felt like he was in the cold winter, with a hint of coolness emanating from his body. The Duchess snorted softly when she saw him like this. "I have control over the entire Duchess mansion. Is it difficult for me to do that little move, and I still don't know?" "Mom." Dai Huabin was just a child in his teens, not too young. When he found out that his secret had been exposed, he suddenly became a little panicked. "Look at your impressive performance," the Duchess frowned slightly. "You are a piece of meat that fell from my pregnancy in October. I remember the 2 moles on your buttocks clearly. Why are you panicking? Is it possible that you are worried about my mother causing trouble for you?" Dai Huabin reacted and awkwardly scratched his head, sneering, "I'm excited. This is my own mother in front of me, what are I afraid of? Conditional reflection belongs to yes." The Duchess took a sip of her wine and said calmly, if nothing unexpected happens, you must be paying attention to your big brother, right? Dai Huabin's expression narrowed and he nodded heavily. He said in a deep voice, Big Brother is already the Soul King, and I have only recently entered the Great Soul Master. The future of my father's title must be chosen between me and Big Brother, and I am a bit anxious. The Duchess sighed and placed her glass on the coffee table. Actually, the last thing I want to see is you and your big brother competing for this title. You are all my children, and anyone who gets hurt because of the competition for the title will feel uncomfortable as a mother. But since you are from the White Tiger Duke's mansion, you must take this path and distinguish between high and low, and I cannot stop you. Dai Huabin remained silent and did not speak. The Duchess glanced at him and shook her head gently. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. You came over today, and I happen to have something to tell you. Dai Huabin turned his head to look. The Duchess smiled and said, Do you still remember the girl Zhu Lu? Your martial soul fusion with her was extremely high, almost reaching a level of 90%. This level has been in the top 10 of the White Tiger family for thousands of years. Your grandfather has decided to send Zhu Lu over to spend some time with you. Chapter 9. Contradictions between the royal family and the Duchy's mansion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. So. Dai Huabin's eyes lit up, and the news was too joyful. That is to say, you will be the only White Tiger Soul Master in the past century who can merge with the Zhu family's Ghost Cat Soul Master, the Duchess said in a deep voice. The reason why I have always disagreed with you reporting to Shrek Academy in advance is because I am waiting for this news. Now it seems that I have what I want, and you, in the next year, will wholeheartedly cultivate a relationship with Zhu Lu and strive to cultivate your martial soul fusion skills as soon as possible. Do you understand? I understand. Dai Huabin nodded heavily, his smile completely concealed. The Duchess shook her head when she saw the situation. It's a child in their teens who can't hide any emotions. Dai Huabin is naturally very happy. In terms of cultivation, it is difficult for him to catch up with his elder brother now. There will be many troubles when he competes for the Duke's position in the future, but once he cultivates the martial soul fusion technique, the situation will change in an instant. After all, since the ancestors Dai Mubai and Zhu Zhuqing spread their fame throughout the Douluo continent thousands of years ago, the fusion technique of the Ghost White Tiger represents the core issue of the White Tiger family and the Lingmao family. Whoever can cultivate fusion skills will have a straight rise in status. His elder brother Dai Yueheng did not have any integration with any new generation member of the Zhu family in terms of martial soul, which means he is the only one. Are you still teasing that little slut? The Duchess changed her tone. Dai Huabin's smile narrowed and he nodded. The Duchess said calmly, let's take it for now. In the next year, I will send someone specifically to guide you and Zhu Lu in their cultivation. With so many resources available, you will be able to break through to Soul Lord when you are around 12 years old. Then you can enter Shrek Academy to study and win the championship in the freshman assessment, so that you can quickly enter the sight of their senior management. Moreover, there is an old man named Shen Hongxing who secretly helps that little bastard. You usually bully him in miscellaneous work at most. If you really want to kill him, that old man will definitely intervene, and I don't know what kind of intoxicating soup Huiyuna that bitch gave him back then. I know. Dai Huabin dared not disobey his mother's words and immediately agreed. Ah. Suddenly, the Duchess sighed. Dai Huabin didn't understand and immediately asked, Mom, is something happening? The Duchess didn't want to say much, but when she saw Dai Huabin's serious eyes, she fell silent for a moment and immediately said, Do you know why your father stays at the border all year round without returning home? Due to the deterrence of the Sun and Moon Empire, my father had to sit on the border. Dai Huabin didn't even think about it and directly expressed his own opinion. You're only half right, the Duchess's gaze deepened. This scene also made Dai Huabin instinctively close his mouth. The Duchess said calmly, the Sun and Moon Empire does have the ambition to launch a new attack on the three kingdoms of our original Douluo continent, but they have not yet fully united their hearts within the country. The main forces, stability seekers, and neutral factions are all very strong. In addition, their emperors are getting older and their princes are fighting against each other, so the Sun and Moon Empire cannot pose too much threat to us in the short term. In fact, the real source of threat at present is actually our own side. Is the threat coming from our own side? Dai Huabin seemed to hear something unbelievable and immediately widened his eyes. The Duchess sneered, let me ask you, if you were the emperor, there would be two soul master families under your command who have been intermarrying for thousands of years, uniting with each other. Moreover, these two families are not just intermarriages, but have great influence in different aspects of the empire, especially in the military. What would you think? I will fear and plan against them. Even if these two families have no intention of rebellion, they have the ability to rebel, which is enough. Although Dai Huabin is only over 10 years old, he also knows some things. The most crucial thing is that he is not a fool. It is obvious that the two families mentioned by his mother are his own White Tiger family and his mother's Lingmao family. You're right, the Duchess nodded in approval. Over the years, successive emperors of the Star Luo Empire have been constantly trying to insert various confidants into the Northwest Army controlled by the White Tiger Duke's mansion, attempting to gain their power. But the Northwest Group Army has been in the hands of the White Tiger family since 400 years ago, and internal appointments and dismissals are not under the Emperor's control. Therefore, today, your father cannot allow his power to be deprived. Although your father did not have any rebellious thoughts, he also used the threat of the Sun and Moon Empire to guard the border at any time in order to prevent the power left by his ancestors from being taken away. Otherwise, you think the border is really so busy. You can't even make a trip home. Speaking of which, the Sun and Moon Empire is also quite cooperative, occasionally launching small-scale conflicts, which gives your father enough reasons and even elevates his reputation. Nowadays, within the empire, your father is referred to as the God of War, which makes the royal family hesitant even if they want to take action. Dai Huabin widened his eyes, never expecting that one of the reasons why his father refused to go home all year round was actually like this. The Duchess's tone softened and she said, it's not surprising. If I were the emperor, I would have done the same. After all, the split of the Heavenly Dou Empire was caused by the intertwined forces within the country, and those kingdoms remained large, leading to the emergence of heavenly souls and Dou spirits. Back then, the Star-Crowned Sect saved the empire by turning the tide and then took control of the throne. From that day on, no nobleman who was en theft could obtain a fiefdom. At most, he was allowed to establish his own mansion in one place, which was to cut off the nobleman's infiltration into the area and completely transform it into a state within the country. But the Star-Crowned family has all done so, and now the nobles within the empire are still powerful. How can they not be afraid? Of course, you and your elder brother don't need to participate in these things at present. Your two brothers have only one task, that is, to work hard to improve their accomplishments as soon as possible. It's better to make friends with different powerful talents in Shrek College, so that even if the royal family wants to make a move in the future, it will also be scruples about this. After all, we will fight the mainland, and it is the powerful Soul Master the final say. As she spoke, the Duchess's gaze became solemn as she looked at Dai Huabin with a serious and sincere expression. The latter's gaze also became serious, and he said clearly, I understand my mother. It's good if you understand these things now. Remember, don't reveal what I told you today, the Duchess warned. Dai Huabin smiled and said, don't worry, mother. I have a sense of propriety. Also, take away the dark guards who have placed you in Shrek City to monitor your big brother. Don't have another one. I will give you some of the dark guards to protect you on a daily basis, not for you to monitor your own family. The Duchess spoke seriously. Dai Huabin's heart trembled slightly, knowing that his mother was still angry about this matter. Don't worry, I'll arrange it later and directly remove the dark guards, Dai Huabin said respectfully. The Duchess did not respond, only looked at Dai Huabin with a dignified gaze several times. Ding-ling-ling. Suddenly, a crisp sound sounded from one side of the hall, breaking the almost frozen atmosphere.